Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Not Content Podcast. My name is Jerome Cuson. Joining me, as always, is Brian. And Brian, we are going to be starting a very special month. I know you have been anticipating this very much. For those of you who are not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please like and subscribe. Click the bell icon for notifications. Please give us a 4 or 5 star review on Spotify or Apple to get those algorithms going because it is Sergio September. We will be discussing 4 Sergio Leone Westerns here in the month of September. And we, of course, are going to start with A Fistful of Dollars, Clint Eastwood's probably his first big movie role, a role that he has famously received a $15,000 salary. And boy, did he turn that $15,000 salary into something else. A 60, 70 year movie career at this point, and it is still going, even though he is 95 years old. He is still with us and is still apparently making movies. He apparently is in pre-production on a movie, so who knows? We might get one more a Clint Eastwood movie before it's all done. But let's go back kind of to the beginning of his movie career. Brian, what I don't think people realize is that this was his first big movie role, but he was very much kind of the very first person to transition from being a big TV star. He was one of the co-stars of the very popular Western show Rawhide, and then he would get this role, and of course would become primarily known for movies, and I mean pretty much never returned to TV. But this is something that I don't think people realize is, we're talking about a Sergio Leone. This is kind of his first big movie, and this is Clint Eastwood's first big movie transitioning from TV.
Yeah, thank you, Charles Bronson, I guess, because originally Charles Bronson was the original choice to play the man with no name, and he turned it down. He ended up working with Sergio Leone down the line, obviously, and we're going to talk about that movie at the end of the month. But for the Fistful of Dollars, it just seems like it was like a perfect opportunity for him, for Clint Eastwood to have this opportunity to star in this kind of role. And I don't know if he knew ahead of time, but going in, like it seems like he didn't know how big of an impact this movie or the trilogy of movies would have on the whole world in terms of like influencing directors and an audience and generations of cinematographers. But I know coming out of it, it just seems like he got this whole education process about being a director more so than working on Rawhide, you know? And then he would go on to work with Don Siegel, of course, but it just seems like he got more of his darker tones and edges from Don Siegel, but the cinematography, camera, in terms of like character development, all that kind of comes from learning under Sergio Leone, I feel. And I feel like it starts here, but the movies get better and better. And what's crazy is that all three films were filmed back to back to back. And it just seems like once they got their groove going around probably the end, making the end of the first movie, it's just like they were in the groove and just found that rhythm, and the movies got better and better. And that's why the later two movies are even better than this one, which is crazy to say considering that this is more the legendary one that's kind of like quoted and more well known just because it was used in Back to the Future 2, obviously, and we always reference that with Biff in the hot tub. So there's a lot of things going on with the background of this movie that kind of influences a lot of things. And if you really want to go back, it's because of Akira Kurosawa. And I've mentioned him before. Actually just sold one of his DVDs on eBay just now, Ron. But it's just crazy to me that he influenced a whole generation of filmmakers, obviously. Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, George Lucas, all those people in that same kind of class. And then even before that, it was John Ford that influenced Akira Kurosawa. So it's like the Western influencing the samurai and the samurai influencing the Western, because Fistful of Dollars is a straight up remake, they've said it, of Yojimbo. And I don't know if you've seen Yojimbo, Jerome, the black and white samurai version of this movie. They're about the same. I would say this is better cinematography just because of the color. Yojimbo's in black and white, so there's kind of that difference, but it's still the same vibe. And I'm really just fascinated how it just kind of translates back and forth between, samurai to cowboy western, and then it's kind of translated back in different versions. So it's just this thing that kind of like Star Wars builds on as well, like this idea of a cowboy samurai western kind of vibe. But it all kind of goes back to this, I feel, and it's kind of like what Quentin Tarantino says is the modern start of modern action filmmaking, and I kind of get what he's saying in terms of the cinematography. Because if you compare a movie like The Wild Bunch or Magnificent Seven, which are westerns prior to this, they're still shot in that classic Hollywood way. This does not feel like a classic Hollywood movie at all. the cinematography is so modern,
No,
and it just
it's very different. I think that when you look at movies that were made in the '60s, like there's just a very different vibe to them, and I think a lot of people would cite like a movie like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, or even The Godfather is like the first modern movie that you can kind of feel like it's not just this very staid, old Hollywood style. Like those are the kind of the movies that introduce something more modern in terms of the cinematography, and I think these movies certainly do that as well. And it's really fascinating to me that Sergio Leone kind of cracked the code on how to make a truly great western. I think that John Ford certainly gets a lot of credit for it as well, but I don't think that he was ever interested in critiquing society as Sergio Leone is. And if you read about Sergio Leone's background and you understand like his upbringing after World War II and seeing the soldiers behave so poorly, like he is not a believer in authority. He is not a believer in the idea of soldier saving, and that's the theme that's probably gonna come up when we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I think you see that here, like Clint Eastwood, like his character, the man with no name, is manipulating this situation to his own devices, and I think that it's a really fascinating thing because like you don't really like yes you do have a Yojimbo, but you don't really have a protagonist who's kind of like fucking with two different groups and kind of doing his own thing and making his own way. I kind of wish we would see more of this in movies. I've always wanted to see, even in wrestling. We will be talking about the right match very shortly as well. I would love to see a wrestling character like the man with no name, who's just messing kind of with both the heels and the baby faces, because I think it's such an interesting character, and you can get so much mileage and depth out of that character. And I think somebody like Clint Eastwood at the beginning of his career really benefited from playing a role like this. Like I think he is able to develop the persona of Clint Eastwood. Like Clint Eastwood, like I don't even know that he's a real person anymore. He is this persona that he carries with him throughout the westerns, throughout the Dirty Harry movies, as he gets older into like the roles where he's like an old man in Unforgiven, an even older man in Million Dollar Baby, an even older man in stuff like The Mule and Cry Macho. But I mean, I think you see all of that as he develops it, and I think it starts with this movie.
totally. And I just want to say, like, the villains in this movie, they're really well thought out. I'm really a big fan of Gian Maria Volante. He plays Ramon. He also plays the antagonist villain in the sequel. He's not in Good and Bad, the Ugly, but this performance of his gets even better in the second movie. But I just love the way that he's looking and the way that he's portrayed. You can tell that like Eddie Kingston really like studied this guy, and I know this because we know that Eddie Kingston has come out to Ecstasy of Gold, right, on the Indies. And he's quoted, I think, some parts of this movies or the trilogy in his promos and stuff. So I can just tell, like, this guy and Eddie Kingston really, like, Eddie Kingston looked up to this guy because they have a very similar facial structure as well. And then some of the other characters in this movie are just really well thought out. I think I like that. I forget her name, but it's the female character. She's victimized. She becomes essentially a sex slave to this Ramon
Marisol,
character,
I think is her
Marty
name, but
Sol. It's tragic, man, but it's you know what? It's
it's
again,
really
it's a
compelling.
stigmatization.
That's the thing.
Yeah,
Is like
like because it's this idea that apparently in some poker game the husband lost, and Ramon obviously cheated in the poker game, and as like a way, like, oh, you don't have the money, I'm gonna take your wife, right? And then he kicks him and the little boy out of town, and the whole little boy throughout the movie's crying for his mother. It's just tragic, and it's just like heart wrenching. So you want this revenge, right? It just builds up to this big revenge at the end.
yeah.
And not only that, like it's the Rojas versus the Baxters, and if you kind of notice, it's almost as if like it's again like this whites versus the Mexicans gimmick going on with
I mean,
Clint
you could
Eastwood in the
argue it
middle.
even goes back to like Romeo and Juliet, like that gimmick as well. Like you could almost make the argument
Right.
that it goes back to that.
And then not only that, it's like every time Clint Eastwood does something, he's getting paid $500 here, $500 there. But at the end, like he
Oh, it's a
takes a
great
lot of
gimmick. I mean, it's
yeah,
unbelievable. It's so great, man. Like I
and then he takes
absolutely
the money and
love it.
gives it to most of the money to the family at the end, showing you that he really has a heart and that he knew the right thing to do was to get this family out of town before the whole town just kind of just gets in a giant gunfight at the end. But man, even the town, the bartender, I thought was a really great character because at first he was like, "I need you to get out of town. You're just gonna die. This town is not for you." And then he ends up defending the family. He even one point sticks his gun at a Ramon, which I thought is a great character moment for that character, considering he was hiding the whole time and finally just got the balls to say "fuck this guy." So there's a lot of great character arcs in this movie, very similar to the character arcs in Yojimbo. So that's kind of they already had the outline
I
for
mean,
it.
this is kind of a blatant ripoff of it, so it only makes sense. So I do want to say, so I think that in terms of a wrestling character, Eddie Kingston in Chikara at times definitely came very close to this vibe where he's kind of playing off both sides and is kind of a man onto himself, especially in the BDK angle, which I don't even know what your familiarity with that angle is, but Eddie Kingston definitely kind of rode the line a little bit. Like ultimately, he did come out on one side against the BDK, but that was definitely memorable. And when the Undertaker returned in 2004, like his whole vibe with the cowboy hat and the leather coat, it definitely like people definitely refer to him as like Sergio Leone's Undertaker. I don't know if you remember that.
Well, to me, that's Clint Eastwood Undertaker is what I because that's kind of like the beginning of his Unforgiven run, if that makes sense. And I didn't really put it together when I was a kid, but I saw the comparisons to Clint Eastwood and Undertaker over the years, and it's like I
I
trace
mean,
it back to that.
during WrestleMania 20 when he came out, I was like I had not even seen a Sergio Leone movie. I was like, this is like the Clint Eastwood version of the Undertaker.
Absolutely, and you get those Unforgiven vibes for sure because it's the twilight years of his career, and that's
Right.
very similar to Unforgiven. But I mean, going back to this movie, it's like I love the visuals. I love how a lot of it takes place just bright in the day, and you can see a lot of like the foreground and the background. And even when they shoot at night, they somehow like do the lighting correctly, even though there's no it's all natural lighting, right? But they'll
I
do
mean,
from
it's
they'll do
definitely the simplest of the three.
yeah, like
Like,
they'll
it
do day
definitely
for
doesn't
night.
have
Yeah, they'll do day for night shooting, right? But then they'll have these great locations of like fire or lighting in the background, and then it just works for the foreground when he's hiding, and
like
they
you could
come
just
out
tell
in the
that
back.
Sergio Leone doesn't have the budget like he would. Like Fistful of Dollars looks a million times better than this movie, and it's pretty remarkable just how much better it looks. But I think that the reason that I like this movie so much, I really like all three. But what makes this movie special is just the character and the fact that it does have that grittiness to it that I really appreciate and that you just don't get with a lot of movies these days. Like, because everything is shot on digital, you just don't get that grime. You don't get the dirt. You don't get that feeling of like the dirtiness. And I think that is something that I really appreciate that you get with a movie like this that is shot for a relatively low budget. It's a spaghetti western. So it's cheap and like the dubbing is kind of charming in its own way. Um, I just think that this movie and the other two as well are very special because it is very much a product of its time, and you just would not be able to get this in 2025.
And like I gotta point out some of the stunt work in this movie. There's a lot of like fire stunts, which I was kind of like shocked at because when you watch this, you keep thinking like, oh, this is the '60s. They actually have to light people on fire, right? You either got to do a dummy or you're going to film these people close up with a lot of heavy layers. So what they did was some of the people get shot while they're on fire, but the camera lingers on these people for a good 5 seconds to show you that they are actually on fire and these are actual people, which I think adds to the element of danger
And that's
to the movie.
crazy. I mean,
Yeah,
the thing about thing in wrestling is like the thing about they talk about in wrestling, and I know Mick Foley talked about it in his book. Like, you cannot control fire, and just to see like even on a movie set, which again, this is a movie that is not shot with a tremendously high budget, so you can only imagine just how dangerous it was. But like you compare that to movies now, I mean, no movies use actual fire anymore. It's all CGI fire, and it looks bad. And look, I understand like controlling fire is hard, but like you just again, this is another example of you just feel the authenticity of this movie, and you just don't get that in a lot of other places.
especially with stunt work that, in the 60s, you're limited with no CGI. So you can only do so much. And there's another great spot where this guy gets shot. I don't know if you noticed, but that other brother looks like Al Perez, and that's like a deep 80s territory cut.
That is a very deep '80s cut. I will tell you
but
what.
but he does look like Al Perez minus the hair, right? And he's the guy that gets shot at the top by the bartender, and then he falls and he does this great. I don't know if I mean it's probably a double, but the way that it's edited, it looks like he does a front bump like a swanton, and he just sells it like completely well. It was incredible. Just the facial work in this movie is incredible because it feels like there's so little dialogue, but there's so much visual storytelling going on with the like your
I mean,
eyes and the
that's
way
the
that
essence
people are
of Sergio
reacting.
Leone, and we're gonna come
Yeah,
back.
it's a talent, man. It's absolutely a talent in directing.
I mean, it's the kind of panache that you just don't see with a lot of directors these days. I mean, like lately, and this is going to come up in a couple months, but like I've been watching some John Woo movies. Spike Lee has a new movie coming out later this week, so I've been watching a lot of Spike Lee movies, and the visual panache and the personality of those directors just shines through so much. Like I was even watching earlier today. I was watching. It's the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, and like I was watching this docu series, and episode 3 pops on, and I'm like, did Spike Lee direct this? And then his name come up as the director. Like it was just so obvious. Like you could just tell what the visual flourish is. Like you could just tell that Spike Lee was directing that particular episode. It had a lot of heavy influence, and I feel the same way about this movie. Like nobody else could direct a movie like this. Like his fingerprints are all over this movie, and I do respect John Ford and what he was able to do in terms of like setting kind of his own path, but Sergio Leone just takes it to a completely different level, and I don't know that any other Western director has been able to do what he did, and he's clearly influenced, the Quentin Tarantinos of the world. You watch Breaking Bad, and you can feel his influence all over that show with the way they show the desert and the vistas and some of the close-ups. Like you could just feel Sergio Leone's influence in a way that I don't know that you can feel with any other director.
Yeah, it's a special kind of cinematography that he just has an eye for. It's really really hard to recapture. Tarantino's tried to recapture it. Obviously, John Woo's tried to recapture it. And it's very hard. But the closest thing is probably Clint Eastwood, to be honest, and that's an Unforgiven. And he wasn't even, I would say, like Unforgiven in comparison to the trilogy of the Dollar trilogy is a far lesser, cinematography, like in terms of like level. I would say this is like an A plus. Unforgiven's like a B plus, A minus. So even
I
then,
mean,
it's like
Clint
he couldn't
Eastwood
even.
is just a very
Yeah,
different type of director. Like Clint Eastwood is not the guy that you would expect to do like these really ridiculous
yeah, and
close
that's the
ups.
closest we've gotten. So it's like, it's. I don't think we're ever gonna, because by the time we get to the end of this month, it's almost as if the Once Upon a Time in the West is like the quintessential Western that no one can ever top at this point. So
No,
it's kind of building to that.
yeah, I mean, you really feel it. I mean, to
Yeah,
me, Once Upon a Time in the West is the best movie. I mean, I would argue it's not only one of the best movies ever. I would argue, based on all the westerns I've seen, and I certainly have not seen all of them, but I mean, that is the peak of the genre. Like, it is never going to get any better than that.
yeah. Quick note here. I just recently found out that the Dollars trilogy was released in a certain order to make you think that it's a chronological order, but in reality, they actually designed it
No,
backwards. So this is actually the third movie in the trilogy, even though it was the first one released.
yep.
And we'll find this out because I just discovered this video where it shows you that, of course, in this movie, Clint Eastwood has the get up with the poncho and everything. He actually gets all his clothing in Good and the Bad and the Ugly, meaning Good and the Bad and the Ugly takes place before that. And not only that, that has the Civil War involved. In this case, we actually see some gravestones that say like 1873, knowing that this obviously takes place after the Civil War. So this is actually like the Return of the Jedi of the trilogy, and then it goes kind of backwards where in the next movie we're going to see the Man with No Name, but we're going to see him actually get the bullet holes in his hat, which explains why he has bullet holes in his hat in this movie, meaning that, of course, that is actually the second movie, and as you go backwards, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is
Canonically,
actually the
this
first
is the
movie.
third movie, is what you're saying.
Yeah, Yes, and it took me all these
That's
years
pretty
to figure that
amazing.
out. Yeah, and it's not like it's not like a film theory. It's actually like they laid out the clues within the costume to actually answer those questions. And
what's amazing to me? So there is in Back to the Future 2, there is a direct reference to this because obviously they're teasing Back to the Future 3 being a Western, and Marty McFly calls himself Clint Eastwood. I always thought that scene from the end from that they show was from Good and the Bad and the Ugly. It is actually from this movie, and that's pretty amazing to me.
because obviously they steal the ending of this movie. Spoiler alert: the whole like get the
Yes.
metal cover for the chest plate. And what I didn't notice until like recent viewings is that I kept thinking like, why is Clint Eastwood like shooting the metal chest plate that he's making in when he's in the cave? Right, he keeps shooting at it and shooting at it, and then I realized he's using the bullets to double up on the armor to increase the thickness. Did you notice that? I thought he was just
Pretty
testing it,
great.
but he's actually like intensifying the armor by adding bullets and actually making it thicker, which actually makes
I
sense.
have to say that it is actually a really well done scene, and it's pretty brilliant. It's actually much more brilliant than I think Back to the Future 2 even suggests. Like, I think when you actually watch it, I think it comes off much better.
Also because of the dialogue early in the movie, like when they were shooting the that
And the
whatever armor
score and the
and the
score
score.
playing over, like
Yeah, so
they don't
basically the line is if you're gonna shoot somebody, shoot them with a Winchester rifle and not a gun. And if you're gonna shoot somebody, shoot them in the heart so they know they're gonna be dead. They don't say headshot. So in this case, Ramon is shooting him in the chest and he keeps getting up and up and up, and he's like, what is going on? And then he recites the line at him, and then it just makes him shoot in the chest even more. And then it's almost as if the Thor thing goes off in my head. It's like, you should have done a headshot, right? That's the whole thing. He tricked them because he knew that he was just going to fall back on his thing about having to shoot a dude in the heart. And it just bounced back and it
Okay,
just
so
totally
Brian,
failed.
so I know this that you're gonna love this. All right. So you were texting me earlier that you said that Clint Eastwood would be the greatest Batman of all time, right?
Oh, yeah. I still believe that.
So, like in the 1989 Batman, you realize why he would have the yellow symbol on his chest, right?
No. Go tell me.
Because it draws the attention, and when they shoot him in the chest where he is the most protected.
Oh, my God. Are you kidding me?
No,
Wow.
I'm very proud of you that I'm so proud of
Okay.
myself.
See? This is why this movie is so influential, man. It's like smart.
I mean, it's one of the reasons.
I mean,
There's a
Clint
lot of
Eastwood
reasons.
Clint Eastwood wins the day with science. My goodness. And it also ties back to that Thor thing. It's like, aim for the head. You know what I'm saying? Like
I
it's
just want to point out that Back to the Future 2 and Batman 1989 or Batman both came out in 1989 and both make indirect references to this. Or I guess Back to the Future 2 makes direct reference. Batman 89 makes indirect reference to this movie.
correct. So with all that being said, this is not actually the best movie in the trilogy for me. And I
I
know
don't think so
Jerome,
either.
yeah.
I think it's a rock solid 8 out of 10. Like if this was the only movie these two ever did together, it would be extremely memorable and it would be well worth watching regardless of anything. The fact that they are able to top themselves twice is really, really impressive.
Yeah, I'm going 8.5 out of 10 only because I'm shocked at the running time. But I did notice that
A clean one
because
hour and
this
40 minutes. Yep.
yeah, but because this is almost a direct, shot, not shot for shot, but like a direct rip of Jimbo.
Yeah.
That movie's under 2 hours as well. And if you notice, the writers switch up in the next two movies. It switches to a different writer, and he's the one coming up with the more original stories, which is why those movies kind of play out longer, have longer story arcs and character arcs. And we'll talk about that. And they even add Lee Van Cleef to the mix, which adds more to it.
I mean,
You don't get that in here.
he adds so much to the next two movies. Like you read about this guy and you're like, how is? I mean, he was literally born to be in a western like this.
And like I mean, he has a New Jersey accent, right? And
He
it's on record that
does.
he was going to record the dubbing in the southern accent, but they told him not to because he sounded too cool. So I get it. Like he just sounds like a cool guy. That's why John Carpenter hired him for Escape for New York. So yeah, good stuff all around.
I mean,
And
he basically got a second career. I mean, he's done a lot. He did a lot of westerns after this, and it really, I mean, it's easy to see why. Like he steals for a few dollars more, and I'm
It's
really
like he's
excited
the
to talk
Jake the
about.
Snake of westerns, if that makes any sense, folks. Because like the way he
I think
talks,
that's absolutely true. Like if
the
Jake Roberts,
visual, his mustache,
he
whether or
is.
not
I
we should
mean,
trust
yeah.
this guy or not. In every well, in the next two movies, it's very much do we trust this guy or not. But the second one is more of him being a babyface, so we'll get to that great twist. But yeah, 8.5 out of 10 for me on this first movie.
Yeah, this is. I mean, it's a really good one. All right, let's talk about the right match. So we paired this up with Adam Page versus Jon Moxley. This is our most recent right match of all time. It is Adam Page and Jon Moxley in a death match from All In 2025, taking place in Dallas, Texas. Brian, I have to say this is one of the more impressive matches that I've seen this year. I'm certainly not somebody who's watching wrestling on a weekly basis anymore. This, and I know Adam Page has won the AEW title before. He beat Kenny Omega in the last pay per view of 2021. Had his run with the belt the first time, and it really felt like that run got mired by the fact that, oh my God, Brian Danielson has returned. Adam Cole has returned. CM Punk, for God's sakes, returned. All of that happened during Adam Page's run, and it really felt like it undermined it. This time, it feels like AEW is in a much better place to position Hangman as the guy. They smartly have changed the rules around the Casino Gauntlet, um, so it's not going to be a cash-in situation. Like he has just been positioned so much better for this second run, and that's not to say it's a guaranteed success. But the way that he was built up, and to finally overcome Jon Moxley 10 months after Moxley retired Brian Danielson, it was not only a great moment, but one of the better matches that I've seen this year.
A lot going on into this match. So, first of all, let's put this on the table. It's a Texas Death Match. They had a Texas Death Match a couple of years ago, ended the same way. So my thinking is that they're gonna have a third match down the line. That's gonna be a Texas Death Match, probably 2 years from now, a year from now, whatever. And the roles will be switched, and Moxley will be the baby face, and Hangman will be the heel. I just got this feeling because
I
now it's
don't
the
think that's going to
story.
happen.
Because now it's the story that Moxley can't beat Hangman in the Texas Death Match. That's just one thing he can't do. He's done all these
I
things
don't.
in AEW,
I don't
but
think
can't
that
beat him.
Jon Moxley will be. I just don't think Jon Moxley's going to ever have another AEW title run again. I really don't.
I don't know if it'd be a title match. I think it could be like just like because the story with Austin and Rock is like Rock was never able to beat Austin in those first two Mania matches. Then he finally beat him at the third one. I kind of see that as like coming back to the storyline down the line, but that's for down the line. In terms of the way they built this up, yeah, I mean Hangman wins the tournament, the Owen. People thought it was going to be Osprey, but it kind of made more sense for Hangman to do the cowboy shit in
And given what
Texas
we know about Osprey's situation, it is very possible that he is out for a
for a long
very long
time.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was the right decision in hindsight. He cuts this amazing promo in Spanish in Mexico, and then he's got this momentum going, and then this idea that we still haven't seen the title for months, and it's in the briefcase, and people were pissed off about that, and I think people kind of mix their feelings up in terms of like being worked for a storyline versus like I'm the smart mark that knows
I
better
mean,
than
the
Tony
actual
Khan.
problem is that Jon Moxley's title reign was pretty bad. I mean, people are going to try to retroactively defend it, but it just wasn't very good. Like it just wasn't.
It had good moments. I'll argue that it had good moments, and then finally, I think once that build up happened, it's like finally, are we going to finally see him drop the title and then open up the briefcase, right? Because I know there was a lot of sentiment that, oh man, Swerve should have won a dynasty. Oh, they missed the boat on Swerve. He should have won a dynasty. But then you don't get the moments, right? Like you don't get the moment of Swerve coming in at the end, throwing Heyman the chain, giving that nod of approval like an 80s buddy cop movie or something like that. And, tying in all those storylines. So I love how this match ties in all the storylines that Hangman's been going through the last couple of years, his war with Swerve, and then them kind of bonding for the right cause and kind of become, it's very Nikita Sting, if that kind of like rings the bell, because it felt like that moment. It's like, because Sting and Luger, it's like based off their friendship. Nikita and Sting were enemies that had to like, settle up and face the dangerous alliance for the greater
I
good
mean,
kind of
I
thing.
would argue it's very kind of Paul Heyman would do this in ECW, and Tony Khan's a huge ECW mark, so I would argue it falls in line with that.
Yeah, that had that feel to it, because we know that Swerve and Hangman are not going to be buddy buddy after this, right? They're going to have their moments where they might team up once in a blue moon, but not be friends because of their past history.
Again,
So
it's
that
the
makes
Paul
sense.
Heyman the booking of we respect each other, we don't necessarily like each other.
The Taz Sabu effect is what I call it.
Rob Van
Kind of
Dam and
pretty much.
Sabu, they
Yeah.
feuded,
Well,
become
they kind of
partners.
became more buddy buddy towards like 98, 99, but it took a while for that because in
Yeah,
96 they just destroyed each other. I don't know if you remember that. It
right.
took a long time for them to get
I
to
definitely
that
went
point.
through when Sabu died. I definitely watched a number of the matches, and yeah, you can feel it. I mean,
Yeah. But it's similar. And then the way that Hangman and Moxley already had that history, so throwing in the death match, or the Texas death match gimmick, I think added a lot to it. It being in Texas is just perfect. And the moments in this match, it's like the moment that Moxley gets stabbed with the fork, it's like you're either in or out. That's the moment right at the beginning of the match. It's like they know it's
right.
going
I
to be
mean, they're
violent, so
setting the
let's do this at
tone
the
from the
beginning.
start.
And they're going to let you know you're going to either follow us for the rest of this match or you're going to turn it off right now. And I can easily see a portion of the audience has turned it off. That's fine. But the way that it just built and built and all these, because you see, it's like, oh my God, a bed of nails. What's going on here? And then all of a sudden they use the bed of nails without
Yep.
you even thinking of it. And I thought that was brilliant. So they just set things up brilliantly. It's violent. It's what it's supposed to be. But, the realism and the story they're trying to tell just fit. And I love the sense of desperation at the end of Moxley's face. It's like he knows, it's like his face shows that
Really
he's
good
almost
stuff. I
dying.
mean, it is a really compelling ending, and Moxley did a very, very, very good job.
Yeah,
That's
it
for
looked like
sure.
he was on the verge of death, that he was willing to go for this, and then he tapped out.
I mean, that's what you want. I mean, that is what you want.
If you're not going to pin the guy 1, 2, 3, obviously that's the perfect finish to do it, and it plays off the previous finish from their first Texas death match, and that's why I kind of have this idea that they can have a third one down the line, and Moxley might have to put his career on the line if he really wants to prove to Hangman that he can beat him in his
Yeah,
own
I don't
match.
know. I don't know. I mean,
It doesn't have
you
to
know,
be for the world title. Like Austin Rock, that wasn't for the title, but it's similar in terms of like I got to beat this guy at WrestleMania. I got to beat this
I
guy
mean,
in his own game.
a part of me wonders, like, are they building to Hangman versus Okada? Like, are they going to play that chip at some point?
I think that's
Because
coming at the end of the year. My feeling is that might be the world's end match. But I don't know
because
because
it feels like
or
why would
something
you
like
just
that. Because I think Okada's going to win the Continental Classic again, and that's going to put him over the top and be like, okay, now we got to give this guy a world title shot. So
because it just feels like why do you put Okada over Omega and you're just continuing like he beats Swerve? Like why would you have him retain the title again unless you're gonna
that's the
have
feeling
him
I'm getting too. And I think they're going to use Kenosuke as like the setup guy, and then build up to Hangman and
unless
Okada.
unless unless Konosuke is going to be the one to actually beat Okada, and then they're going to set up Konosuke versus Page. I mean, that's certainly possible
Because
as
that's
well.
possible too. Because I didn't know this recently because I've been not really into New Japan, but I guess
But
Kenosuke won the G1,
he did win the G1.
so that does elevate him in a lot of people's eyes. Because winning
Yeah,
the
I
G1
guess
does a lot.
the argument on the other side is like he is going to be if he's winning the G1 and he possibly wins the New Japan title, he's going to be more focused on that, and he's not really going to be in AEW as much. So it could go in a lot of directions, but I mean this match was very compelling on a very compelling too long show. No
Done
pay
with
per
a
view should go
purpose, I
that long.
guess. But
No
look, I
show
was
should
just
go
sitting
so
there all
long.
day. I had smoke breaks. You know what I'm saying? I didn't miss certain women's matches on purpose, like some people do. So I was, it was Saturday in the
Tony
afternoon for
Storm's the
me.
wrestler of the year. I don't care what anyone says. I will fight anyone,
Oh
and
yeah,
I will
Tony
say
Storm
Tony
Wrestler of
Storm
the Year
is.
for sure.
She
And
absolutely is.
I would say the icing in the cake for me was the Dynamite after, and Hangman comes out and he cuts an Oscar-winning speech, like in the total way that you
In a
would when you
great
win an
building, by
Oscar.
the way. How about that Aragon Ballroom?
I know. I love these smaller buildings that they're picking for TV, and it just makes sense, and just let the bigger shows feel like
It
the
looks way
big
better
shows.
than the ECW arena does. Let me tell you that.
The ECW arena shows have a charm to them. I always mark out for that standing pillar that's in the middle of the entranceway. I
I know
always
what you're
pop for
talking
that.
about. I've been to the ECW arena, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
I love that fucking pillar, man. They never used it ever. It was just always in the way of the entrance, but they just never used it. So classic ECW.
Yep. Anything else to talk about?
5-star match, definitely. Like I said, if you're not really into like fork spots, this match is not for you. And 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 I would say that the spike or
Yeah,
the metal spike spot or the nail spot, I should say, not nearly as brutal as the one that was on TV with Moxley earlier.
correct.
That was way more brutal. So they played it safe here.
All right, next week, we are going to be discussing For a Few Dollars More, the sequel to this movie. Brian, I know you are really excited about Sergio September, and it is going to only get better. Like, this is one of the nice thing about this month is it is building literally. It is going to get better and better, and it will climax with the final movie of the month.
I know, right? I've been waiting for you to like get on board with this for so long, Jerome. You know that I'm a big Sergio Leone fan for all these years, and you finally just picked a random time in the summer to go on this binge, and
Well, you could thank the
I'm
last
rooting you
fan pod.
on, and I'm
The
rooting you on, and
last
you finally get to the last movie, and
last
you just
fan did an episode on Once Upon a Time in the West, and that pushed me over the edge. So,
and of course being the Terry Funk fans that we are, you know, which might actually lead to a wink wink nod for something coming up for the last match in November. Wink wink nod. But
possibly.
again, it just everything's kind of fitting right now with like these connections, especially through Sergio Leone and Ennio Morricone. And we forgot to mention that Hangman's entrance was the theme from this movie, which is
Yes,
why we picked it.
that is the actual reason that we did match because
Not just this
it
is
directly
Texas
connects.
and cowboy
Yeah.
shit and all that, but it literally had
Yep.
that connection. And I immediately texted Jerome, and you knew that I was crying when I was texting you, like in tears, like, "Oh my god, this is the
Because
dream
I
entrance
knew
I've been
it. Because
wanting."
I knew it. I knew it.
Yeah, this has been the dream entrance I've been wanting for Hangman Page, and not only that, like the subtlety of him coming out to his babyface music, and then the camera focusing on the heel side of the entrance, and all of a sudden he has to run to the babyface side of the entrance to catch the entrance, and then he comes out, and everyone's shocked that he's like the babyface now. So great moment there.
All right. So for Brian, I'm Jerome. Thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you again next week.